Sudipto Mandal, CHRO and Head HR at L&T Metro Rail Limited. Suresh Kumar Sivaraj, CHRO at Mudut FinCorp Limited. Chela Pandian Pichai, Global Head of DEI, Cultural Values and Belongingness, Leadership Development and Sustainability at Biocon Biologics. And Tanvi Choksi, CHRO at Mahindra Holidays. A warm welcome to all. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on this insightful topic, DEI in the age of AI, mitigating bias in HR, tech, and talent practice. To know more about HRAI and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. I am pleased to introduce our moderator for today's session, Tanvi Choksi, who will be guiding us through the discussion with her insights and expertise. As the Chief Human Resource Officer at Mahindra Holidays and Resort India Private Limited, Tanvi leads the organization people strategy, driving employee experience, business aligned HR solutions, and talent led growth. With over 2 decades of experience across sectors like automobile, FMCG, healthcare, real estate, and professional services, she has deep expertise in organizational development, leadership development, M&A, and HR transformation. An alumna of TISS and Mumbai University, Tanvi has held key leadership roles at Johnson& and Johnson, Tata Motors, Monsanto, and GLL, where she shaped the people agenda across Asia Pacific. Known for building high-performance teams and delivering innovative HR practices, Tanvi continues to play a pivotal role in Mahindra Holidays' growth journey. To know more about Tanvi, you can follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. We are excited to have her moderate this discussion today. Over to you, Tanvi.
Thank you so much, Faisal. I think that was very kind words. And a very good afternoon to everyone and my amazing panelists for today's session. So I'm really delighted, firstly, to be today on this panel, and thank you to HRAI for getting us together and setting up a really interesting topic, which is also very much in conversation in our minds as we are, working in our day-to-day lives. The panel topic, of course, is DEI in the age of AI and how are we mitigating bias in HR tech and talent practices. So, as I was reflecting on this, I think as HR leaders, we have always been custodians of fairness and inclusion, besides other things in the organization. But as AI becomes more embedded in how we hire, how we promote, how we engage our talent, it is a new responsibility. It is a new responsibility that emerges. And how can we ensure that technology doesn't just scale for efficiency, but also scales for equity for all of us? And this isn't just about checking for bias in algorithms. It is about rethinking how we design, how we audit, and how we apply AI tools and technology in general, so that we're able to uphold the values that we have of the organization and our individual values as well. So if we have to really think about this, inclusion cannot be an afterthought in AI and technology. It really needs to be at the forefront of our decision making and how it is being built and what is the leadership philosophy that we want to embrace. And of course, like I said, today we have fantastic panelists who bring in diverse perspectives across different industries as well, from infrastructure to financial services, biotechnology, and of course also a global DEI leader. So I'm really looking forward to candid real world examples, experiences, and also the things that we're still thinking about and may not have fully implemented, but we're actively talking about as leaders. So I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to introduce the panelists. So before I, hand over for Q&A and questions to them, I'll just introduce the three panelists in a bit more detail. So first we have Sudipto. Sudipto Mandal is the strategic and transformational HR leader with over 26 years of industry experience across different sectors, ranging from manufacturing, infrastructure, technology, IT, ITES, FMCG, BFSI, retail. And he's worked across multinationals and Indian conglomerates. Currently, he's working with Larsen and Toubro as the CHRO and head HR for the L&T Metro Rail Hyderabad Limited. He's an alumnus of TIS Mumbai and has worked with different organizations such as Asian Paints, Zeiss, Oracle, Spencer's, Crystal, Everready, and Star Cement as CHRO and in other senior HR leadership roles. Sudipto is a business leader where he has intensely worked in areas of business strategy, HR strategy, cultural transformation, customer success, leadership change, change management, and many more. And of course, Sudipto is also a very well-known leader who speaks at various events and has participated in various chapters of NHRDN as well. So very happy to have him with us today and share his experiences. Next, we have Suresh. Suresh Shivakumar is the CHRO of Muthoot Finance Limited. Again, a dynamic leader with over 25 years of global experience in building people-first workplaces. He's a true champion of DEI, and Suresh believes in unlocking the power of people to fuel business growth. At MFL, he leads with passion and purpose, driving ethical and value-based HR practices that create lasting impact across 4,000 locations and a workforce of over 28,000 people. Suresh's international experience of managing HR functions across countries like Indonesia, Singapore, Uzbekistan, Sri Lanka, and Turkey add a lot of depth in his strategic thinking. And at MFL, Suresh continues to nurture talent, inspire innovation, and build a culture that cares. A future-ready, inclusive workplace where people can thrive and grow together. So thank you, Suresh, for being here. And last but not the least, we have Chela Pichai. Chela is a globally recognized HR leader and an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion. He comes with over 25 years of experience, and he drives positive change and shapes inclusive cultures. As the global head of DEI, culture, and values, also talent, L&D, and leadership development at Biocon Biologics, Chela is passionate about creating a culture of inclusiveness, sustainability, and social impact. His expertise spans across TEDx speaking, international speaking at UN Women's Empowerment Cell, and driving DEI initiatives. Chela has also mentored over 1,000 women in STEM and is a 3-time HR Leader of the Year in Malaysia. He also serves as a professor in a university and holds various leadership roles in several universities and community organizations. Through his work, he's inspired others to embrace their unique strengths and strive for excellence. Chela is definitely a testament of the power of leadership and the impact one person can have by finding NBB as well. So I hope I know a little bit of a long introduction, but we do have really amazing panelists. So I wanted to ensure that they're well talked about before we talk and ask them for views on this topic and questions. Now, for the audience, I've thought of structuring this into really 3 parts. One is, can we talk a little bit about DEI itself? And where are we today? Because globally, there's a lot of conversation about where DEI is and what are we still doing in that space. Section 2, we'll talk a little bit about inclusion and what are some of the things that are going on in inclusion. And then lastly, we'll bring it together to say, how does AI and inclusion work together? And what can we do? And what are the watch outs for it? So with that, maybe Sudipto, first question for you. In your view, what does DEI look like in a sector like infrastructure or transport, and where representation goes beyond gender?
Okay, thank you, Tanvi, for elaborate introduction of ours. And I must thank also HRAI for organizing this session, Faisal being a part of, orchestrating this entire panel from being at the back end and now at the front end as well. Well, Tanvi, the structuring has been really good, I must say, and in terms of setting the context and then taking it forward. So since this question is specific to DEI and also related to my sector, which is infrastructure. But I must also say it is not just infrastructure, but it is also about transportation as well, because we not only have created the entire infrastructure for Hyderabad Metro, which is currently the third largest in India in terms of the kilometers, but also we are running the operations of the metro rail. So both, it's like a infrastructure plus also in the B2C segment. So nevertheless, I think the concept of DEI, I really don't see much difference. Only probably, the context could be a little different, but the concept would remain the same across. So you mentioned about a lot of talks worldwide that's happening about the DEI. So for me, at the core of DEI is basically about the diversity of thoughts. Now, I see that, somehow in the industry, we are kind of diluting that core, and we are trying to, probably achieve certain KRAs or certain number in terms of just probably having primarily focus being on the gender and saying that we need to have so many, genders. And if we are really looking at the spirit of diversity and thoughts, then I think a lot of work can be done on the DI front itself. Just to give you an example, that many organizations, even I would say sometimes including us, also we are trying to do that. Okay, we need to fill up certain numbers, but if you have to bring in really diversity in thought, then we need to understand what are the key roles, key positions, where the diversity would be much more impactful and powerful rather than just filling up the numbers. So that's where I think the focus should be, and we should do that. Now, specifically, since you asked about sector, our sector itself has a couple of inherent diversity, I would say characteristics. One being that probably in the infrastructure sector, the multi-regional, multi-ethnicity, the kind of workforce that we deploy, right? And second, I would say that L&T as a group, both infrastructure, non-infrastructure, transportation altogether, because it's a legacy company, we are dealing with a huge amount of diversity in terms of multi-generational workforce. So that's going to be a huge challenge, but somehow I think we are balancing it well in terms of embracing the new ways, Gen Z employees. At the same time, also catering to the needs of 50 plus or about to retire baby boomers, right? So that's where I think our whole balancing act comes into effect. So while we really need to look forward in terms of the agility, in terms of adopting new age technology, but we need to be really sensitive, saying that how the adoption of these new age technologies, including AI, ML, etc., is going to impact our old generational workforce, right? And if you look at the way our benefit structure also is designed to ensure that all the generations are taken care of. So that's, I would say, the as an intro, that's the kind of a characteristic that we hold, and we are trying to manage that. So it has its pros and cons. So balancing is the right answer. That's what I would say.
Got it. No, absolutely, Sudipto. I think you said it well. And I think diversity of thought is at the foundation of DEI. But how do we get that in the companies is, I think, our continuous challenge, and we are all working towards it. And I think the multi-generational workforce that you talked about, it's quite unique and quite interesting because we do have 5 generations in the workforce. So it's definitely interesting. But so maybe with that, Suresh, for you, if in your context, you can talk a little bit about some of what Sudipto has talked about, but also focus on regional, linguistic, or social economic factors that influence the DEI efforts in your space.
Okay, so first, thanks, Tanvi and HRAI. Okay, so and thanks to Sudipto also setting the tone for the discussion. So I will throw some numbers which will kind of talk about what we deal here now. So 96% of the population belongs to Gen Z and Gen Y in my organization. The average age of the organization is 32. And the diversity in terms of women employees, we have more than 10,000 who consist of 40%, 41% of the workforce. And my most of the businesses happens in the branches, which is spread across country. So it is highly distributed, more than 4,000 locations, and most of the branches in the rural than that of an urban or a metro city. So that makes things more challenging for me. How I make every individual feel valued, contributed to the organization, and feel that we are a fair organization, and every services of HR reaches out equally to everyone, and everyone feel valued in the organization. That brings in challenge. Anything we do, we need to think about what is the regional flavor. The country like India, which is completely diverse, food to culture to everything. Everything differs. You just cross a state. So how to keep that sensitivity of different regions, languages, anything you deliver. you know so I feel DEI for me, how to create that an organization where everybody feel important, valued, and ensure that uh, uh, transparency and openness in the organization, and it reaches to the last mile. He is the last mile who's sitting in the corner of a village, is getting all the HR services and feel that this organization is treating me with all fairness, and I have been kind of recognized for what I contribute. That's what I feel as an organization we would like to look at. Does that answer, Tanvi, what you wanted from me?
Absolutely, Suresh. I think, like you said, I think the central piece, or like Sudipto said, the central piece of diversity is diversity of thought, but it can come from various angles. And we heard him talk about multi-generational, but you're talking about just how spread out the scale is, and that brings with it the complexity of our regional nuances, definitely, and of course the women and male mix as well, which is core
So
to.
Tanvi,
Hmm.
if I have to think about a communication for in
Hmm.
this organization, I need to minimum think 9 languages to communicate. If I want to
Exactly.
drive a training program, I need to have in that multi-language. I cannot drive it with English or a Hindi language. So it has
Absolutely.
to be minimum 6 to 9 languages to cover whole population to make them understand. A communication also has to go. So that is what the diversity you are managing, and ensuring that everybody is feeling inclusive, feeling fairly valued, and fairly kind of given an opportunity. So that is what I'm talking about, apart from the gender and the generational the gaps which we have.
Absolutely, Suresh. No, and thanks for sharing that. And maybe, Chela, it's a great segue for you to come in, right? Because you handle a global diversity, DEI leadership role. So, what are the shifts you're seeing in how inclusion is being defined or operationalized, even across cultures beyond India? And how is that coming together?
Inclusion is something which demands diversity, because if there are no diversity, there is no need for inclusion. I keep emphasizing the fact that it's not because diversity is there, inclusion has come. Sorry, it's not because inclusion is that diversity is come. It's because there is a diversity, there is a need for inclusion. Hence, inclusion is the fundamental and the core for every human being. I think that's how we were created. We were uh, kind of evolved. But some stage, because of the huge competition, we have become little selfish, and that has created the division. Whilst we embrace diversity, imagine we all of same size, same color, same race, same religion, same gender. There is no excitement in life. So we all want diversity. We want to go out and mingle with people. But then we create a limit for that, and then we start competing. So the thin line between, or a thick line difference between competing versus embracing, which which generally happens in organization at workplace, And that is where the inclusion becomes a rare phenomena. So this is the core of why this is required. But how organization deal, or how could an organization deal, or what we are doing in our organization? So I will dwell on these three combinedly. One, inclusion fuels innovation. Without inclusion, any innovation which has happened is not going to be sustainable enough, because not diverse minds have come together for that particular innovation. Then it is like one brain has created something and the rest is all using it. So in our organization, inclusion is part of a culture. So there is a great innovation is our ways of working. So if innovation is ways of working, inclusion has to sit in the culture. And because we don't want to innovate without an inclusion. And if the inclusion is in the culture, diversity is the fuel, right? And or it's a need for having a good innovation, because diverse mind create a better product, better solution. The the question again, going back to a question, how do we create that? And it's easy to be said than really bringing that change. Belongingness, after several discussions with different country, nationality people, different leaders such as you, and many audience inputs, uh, or the employees' inputs, what I came to a conclusion, that's my personal view, is inclusion happens when there is a belongingness. If I feel valued in an organization, in a society, at home, then I go that extra mile, and then I'm willing to be patient enough to enable a surrounding around me and make it a comfort zone, or I create the comfort zone, or make the people around me to be part of me. And then I consider the society as mine, the family is mine, and same in workplace. So to do all of that, I first should feel valued, and then I should, then my belongingness come to that place. So to summarize, what I'm saying is, if we can create belongingness opportunity for people, and if they're able to find their belongingness, inclusion automatically happens. Then we start embracing diversity. And if belongingness is not coming in, and inclusion can be an operation successful but patient dead, wherein we can have it in our checklist that we have inclusive programs, but real inclusion doesn't happen. Still, we will be living with biases, stereotypes, microaggressions, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. No, thanks a lot, Jella, for that. And, for the broader audience, right? I do think that, a lot of things that were said by all the three panelists sort of summarize why DEI is still relevant, why are we still talking about it? And if you still have people questioning the why of diversity, hopefully you've got enough content from what the three panelists have spoken about. But it is about diversity of thought. It is not just about women diversity. It is across multiple pieces of multi-generational, regional languages, but going back to diversity of thought. And then inclusion. So we always talk about DEI, and that's what our topic talks about as well, right? So diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think what Chela said resonates a lot for me. Inclusion is about feeling comfortable and really feeling part of it, and that can come from if you're valued, if you have a sense of belongingness, and that's how it would fuel. And you need diversity for inclusion. You can't have one or the other, or you can't have one without the other. And definitely that's something to think about. I know, Sudipto, you probably want to come in and say something.
Yeah, no, so very interesting thoughts from you moderator and also my co-panelists. But I just thought probably I'd just like to add my thought, because Chela, I think as Tanvi said, that it's like a diversity inclusion are kind of two sides of a coin, right? So if I look at from the other side of the coin, I just like to share my thoughts. See, naturally, in the society, diversity is prevalent. So that's the natural thing. But unfortunately, I mean, I beg to differ with your one point that we like diversity. In human behavior, actually, we are very comfortable with my kind of people, right? So I like to roam around with my kind of people, make friends with my kind of people. So it is not that we like diversity, right? And because we don't like diversity naturally, but diversity being the natural phenomenon in the universe and in the society, that's where the need for inclusion comes in, right?
Beautiful
So
point.
that's why you see that different countries, different religions, the moment these boundaries are very clear, we would like to have a very ideal boundaryless world, but actually it is not. And that's where the importance of inclusion comes in. And that's where I think what typically two things that would play in the role. One is, I'd say, in the organizational context, one is the mindset, just the culture. And these two are driven by the leadership, right? Now, when we talk about leadership is driving this, the purely it comes from the need, right? So where is the need for inclusion? Because if we have inclusion, then only we are going to embrace diversity properly, right? And if the diversity means diversity of thoughts, and diversity of thoughts means that is going to help us. You talked about innovation. I think Suresh also talked about innovation, right? So if we have diversity, the major or the premium outcome that we can derive out of the diversity of thought is that innovation, progress that you can talk about, changing status quo, right? So these are the needs. Now, the unfortunate thing is probably if the leadership they are able to understand that it well, they will imbibe it, and that mindset change, that shift that happens, then they will be able to drive it properly. But my issue is that when something is driven at the leadership from our, let's say, corporate office in India or maybe global corporate offices, whether it is the need or the rationale behind this, is it really getting translated to the last mile? That's where my issue is. It is more often it's not happening. So that's why probably at the implementation stage we are trying to do a tick box saying that, okay, we need this thing. So I think if you have to really make DNI as a kind of very successful initiative, then I think that need has to be translated down well across the organization towards the last mile. So people really need to understand why it is important. Sometimes
Yeah.
that needs comes automatically. For example, if I can tell you, let's say, um, if probably you find in a different country, all the expatriate, they are all living together. So if expatriate, they themselves have created that community, which is probably diverse in nature, but for the survival, they have created that, right? So sometimes it is created automatically for the survival. So how that survival is necessary in the organizational context, how it is going to help innovation and thereby surviving the organization, I think that should be the core focus to make this both the sides equally important, and then creating the whole coin properly to give it a shape.
Absolutely. Just one point. I'll just keep it short. Sudipto, I agree with you. And society is inbuilt with diversity. But I'll tell you the way I was coming from. Imagine, visualize. It's a very uncommon visualization we have to do, where everybody is same. Then with the variety or the need for change, the need for new diversity will become the utmost need. For example, if everybody is driving one single type of a car, then at some point in time, people as human beings, we get bored. We want some change. We want to be either progressive, that's where the innovation comes into picture, or we wanted to bring some new version of the same phone like iPhone. There is always a new version excites. With people, we are very uncommonly we have seen where we are all one type of people, right? The reason is we are already inbuilt, as you rightly said, the design is that we are all diverse people. But then imagine there's only men in the world and all of them same height, same color, same race, same religion. Then there is no need for inclusion because automatically we are same language, same community, we all connect together. But then people would look for a change. And that's where I was coming. In organization, that's why we want to bring a fresh blood. We want to bring Gen Z. We wanted to have multiple generation. We want other nationalities to come and work with us. We want to be global. The diversity need comes into that, whether it's a product, people, process. There is always, we call it as upgradation. but the
Mhm.
change is where we are getting excited towards. That's where I was coming from,
Yeah.
but I completely
Sure.
agree with
No,
everything
I
else you said.
got your
yeah.
point.
No, and Sudipto and Chela, I think really good, distinction or the finer points that you both have brought out. And I think also, Chela, what you said, I think if everyone was the same, there's no conflict. But because there is differences, there are different viewpoints. That's why the need for inclusion. And I think, Sudipto, you also reinforced that in your own words to say, really, the need for inclusion comes from diversity and how do we do it? And then there's the complexity of scale. And I think it is a great segue into our next section, which is because there is scale, we need technology. And it's really
Yes.
become all pervasive for everything we do. And for years, it's been there. And it is because of the scale that technology makes us more efficient, helpful, blah, blah. Now, on top of that basic technology that we've all now gotten used to using is now AI. And how does AI really help us? How does it not? What do we need to do with it? And I think today, whether we like it or not, or whether we know it consciously or not, there is AI or machine learning, etc., in parts of our HR processes already, whether we've directly implemented it or it is embedded in certain products that we're already using as HR people, or it is being experimented by many of our partner companies that we would be working with for various HRMS, L&D, talent acquisition, etc. tools. So I think maybe we get into this a bit of how are we really thinking about the impact of AI into our HR processes? And is it helping inclusion or is it reinforcing biases, unconscious biases that exist in our organizations or patterns of decision making? And I think that exploring a little bit would be helpful. So maybe a question to any of you, right? Where in your HR processes do you think you're currently using or exploring AI? And are you really thinking about the pros and cons of it as you're using it? And I'm happy for any of you to go.
Okay. Tanvi, let me take the lead. Okay.
Sure, please.
Before I get into that AI, I would like to just take point from Chella and Sudipto. See, I think they both had a valid point, and I feel I took from Chella is that am I valued in the organization? Am I treated fair? And am I feel belong to this organization and have a belongingness? That linkage is created with the purpose of the organization. Okay, let me put across my purpose of my organization where I work for. So we are here to uplift the life of the common man with their improving their financial well-being. That's what is our kind of the purpose, which connects everyone because everyone feels that I need to work for this country, I need to work for the people of this country. That connects them, whether whatever generation they belong to. There is a one emotional value which is always attached with the organization. There where I think we are able to kind of get that done. Okay, so now I will tell you where we are trying to kind of bring in more automations and the AI. Okay, see the difference. We have taken two initiatives basically. One is robotic process automation, which is an RPA, which is an automation tool. I think replacing human being with the machine, where you have job which is repetitive in nature and which is basically not adding too much of value, doesn't require too much of intelligence to kind of handle those processes. I feel that that can be taken out from the HR fraternity so that they can work more on human relations, the human touch to the employee, which should be the kind of a focus area. So we have given this initiative. We have named it as high tech, high touch. We bring in high tech so that high touch work can be done by the resources instead of getting into monotonous job. So all the monotonous processes or the repetitive processes, whether it is a confirmation, transfer, checking of the document, etc., shortlisting the CVs, etc., we have just pass it on to. We are going to pass it on to the RPA. Okay. Now, where we are bringing in AI and machine learning is basically for the purpose of recruitment, for the purpose of learning and development, and for the purpose of analytics, and where we have to get help in terms of decision making on talent related matters. Okay. Now, obviously, as you said, there are biases. It depends on basically the organization culture, to be very frank. Okay. Is that organization has any limitation that I should hire this gender, or I should hire from this pedigree, or I have to hire from this region? If there are biases which has already built in system and that gets replicated in AI, obviously those biases will passed on, to be very frank. And similarly, for example, we are working on creating success profile based on our historical data. Who's the candidate will be most successful in this organization if I take my high performing guys and do all data crunching of them and come out with a solution that these are the aspects if matches. Yeah, that is going to be the best profile from the outside. Their biases can come. Can we address those biases? If the machine is throwing, it doesn't have emotions and it just goes with whatever kind of rules you have set for it, it will go with it. So there, can you apply check? So I feel that if AI is a maker, the checker needs to be a human resources professional who can emotionally understand and say that, okay, remove this bias. I don't want to look at it. Okay, exclude that and then give me a ranking. Do you understand? So I am just trying to say that is the way we are looking at. And similarly, to save our people's time, AI, why we want to bring in AI in terms of helping the people. I feel it is going to help more in terms of encouraging DEI, because sometimes humans have more biases than machines. If I feed some right things, I can take it off human biases, and I can see that it is able to bring in more diverse workforce for me than that of a human being. So that is what I personally feel what we are currently doing in our organization. Okay, and I feel it will bring in more diversity, more, and it will also kind of bring in more fairness in the system. And if I had to tell a machine to rank people without seeing their faces, I think machine will do a better job than the human being. I will have some my own biases wherein I will bring in somebody up because of my biases.
Yeah.
To be very frank.
Absolutely. And Suresh, you brought in some very interesting points, right? One, you talked about the fact that RPA, right, robotic process automation, has been around for a while, and we're using it in various systems, tools, etc. And of course, recruitment, L&D, analytics are the key things that it's getting used for. But you also said that, obviously all of these tools are using past data to make future decisions. And given that we know past data can have biases that exist, we have to be careful on how we're using it. But at the end of the day, we know humans have biases as well. They are in fact unconscious. So if we keep this on top of our mind, we can actually create rules that help us get away from
Absolutely.
bias rather than not. But I think the key point you're saying is it has to be a conscious thought that needs to go in to set up the rules. And if there isn't that conscious thought process, it may lead to reinforcing of biases that probably exist in
So
the data and the
Tanvi,
systems. Hmm.
yeah, you exactly you're bang on. I am just trying to say there is a governance mechanism.
Correct.
There is a
Yeah.
review
Yeah.
mechanism that I have said this is the outcome which has come. Where
Yeah.
do I feel there are biases which is not
Yeah.
as per my culture of my
Yeah.
organization? Can I set that right? And it should be a
Absolutely.
regular, continuous governance process. That's what we're just trying to say.
Absolutely. No, that sounds great, Suresh. And maybe with that, so the question for you, right? And I know you may have slightly different views on some of this, and you've probably experienced the downsides as well. But just what are some of the have you had concerns with using AI in some of your processes, HR processes, and specifically linked to bias and fairness? And have you had to pause, rethink, or do something differently in the HR processes that you've implemented?
Sure. In fact, very nicely, Suresh has kind of encompassed the entire gamut, right?
Hmm.
So I think our responses will typically be a subpart of that as well. If I have to still say that, I look at AI from the 3 P's point of view: past, pattern, prediction. So AI has been there since 1950s, but none of us talked about AI before because we didn't have past data to create a pattern and thereby prediction, right? So now only big data coming in, we started talking about AI in a big way. But as you guess, so I am little afraid that when this concept is taking shape, we are creating a mountain out of a mole in terms of our expectation. And I think that's where the problem is, right? But Suresh rightly said that, okay, while that's there, we need to have a conscious keeper to ensure that, it is taken care of properly, right? But having said so, does that mean that mountain is or the mole is not required? Of course, it is required, and that's what I think, Tanvi, when you had your opening statement, you said that it's managing the scale, right? The way we are scaling up, the kind of speed that we are talking about, in that context, it is really difficult for human being to manage that scale, and that's where I think the technology will come in. And Suresh, you also mentioned HR technology. I'd like to differentiate a little bit that HR technology versus AI. HR technology is basically to talk about the repetitive aspects, how we can take the help of HR technology to manage that as far as the present is concerned. AI is, of course, one step ahead, saying that how not only manage present, but I kind of predict for the future, and that's what you go about it. And now I think new tool which has come in called agentic AI. Uh, Experts are talking about that. That's also kind of not only predicting, but it is also helping in decision making. But
Correct.
how? Because they are trying to, also amalgamate with the context. So that in a simple language, that is still nothing but uh, past data of different contexts being also analyzed, and thereby it is becoming little more intelligent to see that, okay, in this context, what could be the prediction. Uh, Whatever we say, particularly, it is the pattern and prediction. So from that point of view, there is a huge risk that is there in terms of uh, how we put the data in the past. If the garbage in, then garbage out is the possibility, right? So
Okay.
very, very interestingly, Suresh talked about that, the ranking can be done, and I might be biased, this thing. Yes, as a human being, if I am biased, then nobody can help. But the assuming that I am not biased, but how my system is ensuring that there is no bias, right? So if I look at AI and I assume that I am not biased, then I am also dependent on my predecessors who could have been biased in feeding data there. So if the data fed, which was the biased data, then today I will get the biased output, right? So the beauty of AI is that it is not about you, it is about others as well who have done that in the past, right? So that data of which you as an individual do not have any control. So that's, I think, where there is a huge risk that if we really talk about any of our HR processes which we are using as an AI, whether it is recruitment or T&D, etc., then that risk is always there. Now, having said so, to manage that scale, yes, today the number of resume that coming in, etc., we have no other option but to take the help of AI to ensure that at least preliminary, filtering is done. I'll just give you an analogy. Many people say that, okay, the different organizations like previous organizations when I worked, we used to go to the premier campuses only. So the many people will ask, those who are not from premier campuses, that why do you take only from premier campuses and you pay them more? So I said it is nothing but eliminating risk. Because if I have to be absolutely fair, then I have to visit hundreds or thousands of campuses across India. And the amount of time that I will spend, it will not possible for me to spend that much of time to get the ROI to recruit, people. So it is better that I already go to the predefined campuses, A rang or B rang, whatever, because I know some sort of filtering that has happened. So the AI is actually doing the same thing that, if I'm having thousands of resume, we are actually trying to eliminate that. Does that mean that there could be one person which AI has rejected would have been a better fit? Yes, of course, that possibility is there. So there is a risk that is there, and we have to balance saying that how much scale I'm going to manage against what's the kind of accuracy of decision we'd like to look for. And that's where the conscious keeper, that's point is coming in. Second point, I would say, of course, it also helps AI. For example, the areas where I'd like to standardize, for example, onboarding. If we feel that we need to have standardized onboarding across, then technology or AI is going to really help in that context, right? Third thing I would say probably where we need to be a little conscious is that where particularly in terms of, let's say, assessment of people or maybe training and development, right? There, I think some sort of data sensitivity and credibility issue is always there because I'm using a huge amount of personal data to create as a data bank for future prediction. So how it is going to be considered, that's one aspect is there from the employee's point of view as well. So I'll primarily say these are the three things. So what we are doing it, yes, recruitment particularly, this is where we are maximum use of AI as we can see today, but that is still not foolproof. So we have a conscious keeper to ensure that a human brain is eventually taking the final decision.
Absolutely. And again, Sudipto, I think you brought out the risks very clearly and things we should think about. How do we manage that risk? And I think also a little bit of that maker checker governance mechanism that Suresh had spoken about in his part. But also you've reinforced that we can't do without it, right? There is a certain scale, there is a certain efficiency, there is things that we want to manage. And if used correctly, where we're consciously thinking of biases and rules and setting up systems, we can actually use it very powerfully where it doesn't affect biases, but yet, allows us to operate at much higher levels of efficiency and manage much larger scale. So I think, it's that balance which is very important. And, maybe Chela, for you, I'll ask you a question linked, but there's also something that's come up on the chat. So I'll try and club it together. But how do you, from your perspective, think that we can, embed inclusive values into how AI is working? And what are the ways that we can embed those inclusive values into our thinking? And the question that's also come is, what role do you think ERGs or underrepresented groups play in designing or evaluating AI tools in HR? And is there, this governance role or, pool that we talked about? Does that have to be HR or some central teams, or can we start using these broader ERGs and underrepresented groups to help us manage that better?
I'll keep it real quick so that we can take more questions because audience, I'm sure, want to interact with all the three of or four of us. So technology influencing the DEI. When I say DEI, just not running a function, but it is about inclusion, which Suresh, Dibbatto, all of us, I think, Sudipto, of course, you also emphasized and alluded to. Technology can help us in making unbiased decision. I know the risk which Sudipto highlighted. If someone else feeds and you are the recipient of that, or you inherited somebody else fed the data. But then imagine, I wanted to visualize this. Maybe it's already there, but for me, it's a visualization aid where I have a co-pilot, not the co-pilot which we see in MS Teams, but this is more of someone who travels with me like my advisor, which is a technology. My decisions, it kind of relates to the consistency, and it looks for a biasness and tells me in my coaching conversation if the technology is enabled, and it tells me that no, you are unfair 20% in your conversation today if it gets recorded, right? Or imagine I have a icon, I just click that whenever I have a conversation with somebody, it gets the transcripts and then it converts and then it gives me a score every time. That in every conversation or in my mobile phone, I'll just keep it on and it tells me today you are 30% biased. And then if I ask for why, and it gives me there's unfairness here. These are the times you have used the gender agnostic language, and these are the times you used more of he than the she, or it says only he and she used. That itself is discrimination because you're not inclusive of other genders, right? And so all that I will do is every conversation I put it on and then I go and see the score. It helps me. It corrects me. It's like a pilot travels with me to course correct, right? And then in my coaching conversation, in my boardroom conversation, meeting conversation, in my counseling conversation, or when I go to the stage and the way I speak, everywhere I can record it and come back and tell, right? And then it also keeps the data saying that last year, this time, your percentage was 20%. Today, you're 10%, you're improving, right? It gives me a motivation to see, okay, I'm progressing, I'm finding my next best version. So technology can do lots of miracle the way we communicate to each other, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where I see the future, how in being unbiased and even my unconscious bias it can capture, saying that the way I will relate whether it is a biased approach or unconscious bias, it depends on after reading that I see, okay, this I intentionally said, okay, it's a conscious bias, and this is something I didn't know. It opens my eyes, right? If I'm a person who wants to bring a change in myself, I will automatically correct myself. So that's one part. Second, to the question, how ERGs and the underrepresented groups, right? Underrepresented groups in many organizations is run by ERG, right? There is a one ERG. Like today, I lead Pride for my organization, as though I'm in the head of DEI and I'm head of women development. But I have personally taken an ERG, which many were hesitating. I said, no, I'm going to be the ERG lead for Pride. So then, unfortunate in India, even women is in the underrepresented group, and which is 10 years back it was very high, but today I don't want to believe that. But again, the data and statistics says that still some more work to do, but we all have progressed well. I think thanks to all of us, with the audience, so many people putting the genuine efforts. I think our country is progressing when it comes to DEI to larger extent in the last 5 to 10 years, but long way to go. We will get there. So ERG representation for underrepresented groups is must, and I think there has to be a small group of or a big group of community who need not to be a part of that community, but still I stand up for them, right? There are people who say I'm in PWD, but not necessarily they're with the different abilities, but they are standing up for them, right? I'm standing up for women, and I'm not in the women gender, but I say I am an ally. I want to be there. So ERG is very important, and they can make a difference. How technology can help in running ERGs or bringing underrepresented groups into organization. I think even Suresh touched upon. Imagine, or it's already happening. Even our company have many company has a tool where you mask the CVs and you don't look at gender mention anywhere, and even ability representation should not be there when you're selecting a candidate based on the CV. When you call for an interview is when you come to know whether the person belongs to Pride community or a PWD community, or a person is a woman or a male on the spot in the interview, in-person interview. Then we should be kind of have the right mindset to say the person has made it to this level, and here is it's only attitude, skill, and knowledge. That's what I'm looking for, right? ASK. And if I'm going to be unbiasedly evaluating a person based on attitude, skill, and knowledge, the rest of the work which we have to do is to see what accessibility I have to provide. If I'm choosing someone from PWD, if I've chosen someone from a Pride group, if there is a certain accessibility I have to create, on if it is male or female, what psychological safety environment I have or I need to have, or what are the gaps. I think that's where technology will help us. Otherwise, many times we can hide it, but the fact is that people tend to see the language spoken, the married, unmarried, and then look at who, where. I think that the hiring manager's mindset slowly changing, but technology can help us to accelerate that.
Absolutely. No, Jairan, I think really great examples you talked about because, I remember many, many years ago, there was new technology in those times coming up to say, can we look through your job descriptions and tell you how biased they are and how you've written them and, things like that. And I think it's today embedded pretty much in a lot of different talent acquisition tools that exist in the market. But I think it's about, again, how are we bringing it to the forefront? Are we just going with the flow, Or are we being conscious about what that pattern is telling us? And can we make that pattern of decision making, etc., a bit less biased and a bit more conscious of what we want as outcomes and whatever those are, right? And like Sudipto said, those outcomes have to be different for different organizations because it has to fit your purpose, it has to fit your culture, and it has to fit your organization. But I think that's very important. And maybe, we're almost out of time, but we have time for maybe one last
Tanvi,
question. So I might.
Tanvi,
Mhm.
can I just take just 2-3 sentences of the
Yeah, please.
ERG, not from the
Yeah,
technology front, from
yeah,
overall kind of how a system we want to implement. We want to create a kind of group of people, because I was telling you that I have Gen Z, Gen Y, and
right.
41% of women employee, and across the country we operate. We are creating a regional level think tank, okay, of this population, because the either the Gen X is taking a decision on overall organization without taking the feedback of the Z and Y or woman employee, ki what really they want to have in this whatever policies and processes you are coming up. And similarly can for the AI tools which we want to implement, we want to have a bouncing a place where we can just put that to think tank and take their views, and how we can bring in that inclusiveness in the organization. That is the method we are going to adopt. I just wanted to share that, because that will bring in ideas, what how the policy should be, how we can frame guidelines for our people to be happy and be valued. So that is what
Absolutely.
I was just thinking about.
No,
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Thank you,
that's it.
Suresh. Thanks a lot for adding that. And I think the only last question, and it's come a little bit in the chat as well, is we've heard it is important from all of you. We've heard how we can be more proactive about bringing biases, having the discussion, setting up governance mechanisms to make it happen. But as HR leaders, we are influencing our business leaders as well. How do we help the business leaders and leadership communicate about the balance of efficiency versus the criticality of DEI and that balance that needs to exist? Because, we're pushing ourselves, but I think organizations, business is pushing us to get more efficient. And with agentic AI, I think that push has become even more. But how do we not lose the value of inclusion and these DEI values and practices in how we work? So maybe just very quick one line maybe from each of you on what would be your recommendation for our HR audience on how they can influence the business or the leaders to have this balance in efficiency versus the DEI values.
I'll go first. Create a business
Please go.
case. Create a
Create a
business case
Hmm.
and put it in the KPI of leaders.
Right. Absolutely. And the right things to measure for sure. Yeah. Suresh?
Tanvi, I think it is both way right. Okay, I feel that AI in DI or human resources function, it is at a very nascent stage.
Yeah.
It is looked upon as like we to improve efficiency and bring in kind of more effectiveness for the HR. So I think it is starting with efficiency, okay, and the leadership expectation is now efficiency, and AI is also going through a revolution. Okay, every day it is going to the next level. I feel similarly our initiatives, whether it is DI or total human resources strategy, is going to align to AI, and that is going to deliver more for us, add more value, which as a function, and then leadership team obviously is going to respect for bringing into table the impact on the business. That's what I personally feel, and it has to be driven as a culture. I feel, yeah, obviously I will put that as a KPI so that remains as a focus area. But I feel at a strategy level, if I see my strategy where we have 7 strategy, and AI taken as one of the strategy for us in terms of leveraging on AI for everything what we do. That is what I would like to convey.
Awesome. Thanks, Suresh. Sudipto, any last comments
Yeah,
from you?
I think, probably from the HR point of view, we have to realize that what is the business context and what is the need to influence leadership towards that, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it eventually boils down to two things: short-term versus long-term. Now, if your business requires a long-term perspective, then I think the maturity of leadership to understand that is important, and that's where probably HR can influence in terms of the flip side of focusing too much on efficiency can lead to sustenance issue. That's the one point. However, if I look at the when you are asking, I'm just thinking of the businesses. There could be startups, there could be PE firms. They would like to quickly, for them, time is essence, and they would like to quickly move on, and they are not really thinking of the long-term thing, right? It depends upon who are probably purchasing that. For them, there is no point just influencing them to go for this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And no, thank you so much, all three of you. I think, if I had to sort of just summarize in a couple of lines, one, I think we've all talked about diversity, equity, inclusion, and we cannot forget that diversity starts with diversity of thought. So, whatever small subsection of that we are focusing on, but we can't forget that bigger picture of it is diversity of thought that we're trying to create in the organization. And second, I think that inclusion becomes a need when you have diversity. And I think we all have ample varieties of diversity. So can we think about inclusion more proactively and think about what culture we're trying to build, etc. And then as we are implementing tech tools, especially AI-backed tech tools, how do we watch out for a few things? How do we watch out that, so Dipto said, AI works on three things: past pattern prediction. How can we ensure that if there are some past patterns we don't want reinforced, we make conscious decisions on it? And like Suresh said as well, it is about bringing some of those conversations more upfront, thinking through it, having maker checkers and some governance mechanisms to watch out for things that we may not be able to plan for. But lastly, like Chela said, there are lots of tools available. So let's try and experiment, let's see, and we can become really, really efficient and effective if we can implement AI in a way that really makes sense for us, keeping inclusion at the heart of how we set up AI for us in the systems as well. So hopefully that gives you enough food for thought, etc. And with that, I'll hand it back to Faisal.
Thank you, Tanvi, for your exceptional moderation. Your ability to guide the discussion with such clarity, empathy, and direction created a space where diverse viewpoints could be shared meaningfully. Your thoughtful questions and seamless navigation brought out the best in each panelist and kept the session both insightful and engaging. A sincere appreciation to Sudipto, Chela, and Suresh for your invaluable insights. Your candid reflections on the evolving role of AI in shaping equitable HR practices sparked thought provoking dialogue and left us with much to reflect on. Your time and effort made this session truly impactful. Looking forward to many much more enriching and engaging conversations ahead. For those eager to revisit today's insights, the session recording is available on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. Special thanks to our event partners, Geisha, NASCOM COE, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local, Ahmedabad, and India for their invaluable support in making this event a success. To learn more about these associations, please refer to the links provided in the chat. We look forward to welcoming you to our next session on the topic, the purpose-driven paycheck, why meaning matters more than money, on July 3rd, 2025. With that, we conclude today's webinar. Thank you for being part of this journey. Wishing you good health, positivity, and success until we meet again. Take care and farewell for now. Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you, Chala. Thank you, Suresh.
Hey, thanks everyone. Sudipto,
Thank you very much.
Tanvi,
Yes,
Tanvi,
excellent.
you did great.
Tanvi,
You did
thank
great,
you.
Tanvi.
Chada, Suresh,
Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Tanvi. Thank you, Sudipto. Chala, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.